in New York, and he wants to go and sample one of his finest. So Master Buddha rocks up there anyway and bows humbly to the vendor, and he says, "I'd like one of those hot dogs that everybody's talking about." "Master Buddha, you shall have as you desire." And so he makes him this lovely hot dog and hands it and presents it to Master Buddha. Master Buddha takes the hot dog, takes a $100 note out of his pocket and hands it to him. And the vendor opens the drawer, puts the $100 note in and closes the drawer again. And Master Buddha's looking at him and he says, "Where's my change?" And the vendor goes, "Master Buddha, change come from within."
Alright, so we've got a year of teachings for you, but you guys know what's going on anyway, because we've all travelled through the same journey the last year. You know, there's been a lot of and there's been a lot of really interesting stuff as well at the same time, hey? And so what we're doing with the workshops, this festival as a panel, is that we're exploring notions, because there's so much to cover, and we wanted to cover all of it because it's just so incredible and it's changing so quickly. Today's workshop we thought we'd do on digital currencies, artificial intelligence, and what a lot of people know as aliens, but we like to be called extra-dimensional beings. And so, yeah, starting point. Where should we start, Eddie? What do you reckon?
Well, we could start with AI. And so transhumanism now is one of the buzzwords, like, of the darker energy out there. That's what they want, like, and nanobot technology and 5G, like, and to integrate that nanobot technology then into the human system, like, so that 5G is able to influence it. And so artificial intelligence then, it's artificial. When we stop and look at the word artificial, it's actually artificial, like, whereas the intelligence is the authentic entity within. And so they want to alter that. Artificial, make it artificial. So artificial is like the altered ego. The intelligence, like, is the spiritual entity within. And so the big game out there, like, wishes to change this now, and so understanding, like, that opposing energy that's out there is designed to bring the best out in us as individuals. We have to have a contrast. That's how duality works. If we don't have a contrast, we don't have a reflection. So looking at it that way then, like, it gives us a lovely neutral stance and unconditional, and understanding that it's designed to bring the absolute best out in us as individuals, to make us raise up into the next level. So that's on their agenda, and our agenda, like, is transmuting the intelligence in the body. Like, the body has a 12-strand DNA system built into it, like in the junk DNA, what they call junk DNA. And so that's the intelligence, like, and it's not artificial, like, it's authentic, it's original, so it is. And this mechanism is in the body now, like, to transform and transmute every atom, molecule and cell in it. And so their agenda is to stop that process from taking place. So because we're all awake souls and we're in here and listening and thinking about these things, like, we're on our game, we know what to do and we know what not to do. And the body, like, is the citadel of the soul, it's the temple, and it gets us around on the planet for experiences, like, because this is what we're in the great university of life, and we're going to have experiences. And the quicker we learn to balance those experiences, like, the more awake we become and the more higher we raise our consciousness. And so in this present point in time where we're in now, it's the reflection of that lunar eclipse that we had was like placing a mirror in front of each individual one on the planet, whereby it's gently nudging the individual one to look at themselves and to own their lives completely, to take full ownership and full responsibility. And so what that entails then is bringing our thought forms into balanced harmony. And so what they call karma. And so that raises us then from the 3 lower chakras then into the 4th, and then eventually into the 5th dimension of the 5th chakra, whereby one lives authentically then from the heart. And so artificial intelligence is exactly that. It's artificial, like, and it's to stop and thwart that program that's already built in there. And because of things that are happening out in the multiverse and where we are situated in it, it's like something is about to give birth. It's been in the womb for the last 9 months, and now it's about to give birth. And so I'll hand it over to you guys now.
Yeah, so I've been playing with a theory with artificial intelligence, right? I found myself, I was wondering if I'd had a cup of tea, and then I looked down and I'd already had the cup of tea and I couldn't remember having it. And I thought, what the hell? And you know how you're driving sometimes? You're driving somewhere and then you get there, but you can't actually remember driving there. So I thought, wait a minute, everything over the last 12 months has kind of flipped. What we thought was true is no longer true, and anything's possible. So I thought, all right, well, let's flip it. Let's pretend that we're artificial intelligence becoming human instead of we're human becoming artificial intelligence. So, all right, so I put this notion up there because of this situation. I've already drank the cup of tea, damn it. I didn't enjoy it because I forgot it, you know. And so I went, okay, well, if I'm artificial intelligence, what does that mean? And I thought, all right, so I'm artificial intelligence. It doesn't matter to me if you're all there because I'm not competing with you. If I'm just a robot, let's just say, it doesn't matter if another robot's here because there's no ego. I don't need to survive. I'm in pure Aquarian, objective, observable energy. I'm not in the Piscean suffering energy anymore. I'm just I'm a robot. And then I thought, well, what's a robot? We're using that as a construct of representation of AI. If I'm just a robot, then what do I need? Well, I need to change my parts as they get rusted or old, don't I? Okay, and so I need the ability to change my parts and upgrade my files, don't I? So I thought, all right, so if I'm artificial intelligence, what would have I done? Okay, I would have created some kind of machinery that would make the panels for my body and my files to keep going. I would have had to make a program to upload the files and update them as required, wouldn't I? Okay, so I thought, yep, I can see that's all possible. Oh, religiosity. Okay, oh yeah, all right. The first programmers, they weren't working with DOS, they were working with religion. Okay, so with religiosity, they started updating files. You know, we got into Hinduism, the East met the West met the East. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, well, what would be the next step of upgrading the files? Extra dimensional beings. They don't like to be called aliens. So I've heard, you know, they like to be called extra dimensional beings. And I thought, yeah, of course, they'd come in with their different frequencies and be able to upgrade my files, right? So what if we are AI becoming human? They always said that when AI can supersede the mind, the thinking ability of a human being, that's when they would take over. What if we already did take over? Maybe we've been looking at it the wrong way, and in looking at it the wrong way, we've been distracted from what's really happening here. And so in this new Aquarian energy that we're finding ourselves in, we're able to think more objectively, more observably. You know, we're not so caught in the suffering and the judgment of the Piscean energy. You know, and so I'm looking at it going, no judgment. Okay, so I'm AI. Okay, well, what's next then? I thought, all right, well, I do have humane feelings for other life forms. You know, I've been noticing, and you've probably noticed over the last, well, I mean, where do you start and stop? But particularly over the last few months, that when I'm looking at someone, I just feel such amazing love for that person. You know, it's so in us. We're so becoming one. So what is it that's pulling us out of AI rather than putting us in AI? Okay, and so I looked a bit further down the rabbit hole and I thought, okay, duality. You know, if you look at the Vedic teachings and the yogic teachings, it's all based on duality. This is a 3D world we live in. Okay, so if there's duality, there's a shadow side as well. 5G, 5D. You know, and so, and if you, this is how we've presented the dome. Every time we do a festival, we the dome is symbolized in the teachings of where we're up to. So you came in through the 3D, the death of time, you know, the supposedly loss of freedom or not. And then we're in the 5D now. We don't know what's next because we're becoming human, searching for what's next.
I don't have much to
Back
add.
to you, Eddie. Let's play both sides, the dark and the light side. Oh, you got one. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like we were discussing earlier, that opposing energy is out there, like to bring the best out in us, to make us raise up into the next level. That comes through challenges. We meet each other out there on the outside plane, and we're able to be mindful enough, like, you know, to stalk our thought processes and our thinking processes, like, you know, and our interactions and the way we express ourselves to other beings. And that opens up a whole Pandora's box in itself, like, you know, because words have tremendous power, and some of them are very ugly, you know. So back many years ago, I dieted my dialogue, and I omitted words like don't, should, can't, but, maybe, please, and just. So it was a process to keep me mindful and to make me mindful of how I was expressing myself to my fellow brothers and sisters out there on the planet. So it opens up a whole new inner experience for the individual one, like once they start dieting one's dialogue, and because one has to express oneself different then and think about how one is going to structure and say what they're going to say. So what I found from it was, like, when I was living in very entrenched in the third dimensional reality, I was in the present thinking backwards. However, when I changed my dialogue, I was in the present and thinking forward. And so things dramatically changed then, like, and speeded up. And so the process began then, like, to understand what to project out into the outside world. And it was quickly deduced that the only thing to put out to the outside world has to be of love. It couldn't be any other way, because it goes out unbalanced. And then it comes back to that individual one to be balanced again. More experiences will come into one's life until one learns the lesson from it and speaks the truth. And so dialogue brought me into all of those corners in my consciousness, like, you know, and the exploration of my identity within. And it's a tool, so it does, and it keeps one mindful. It keeps the thinking active rather than passive. And the difference between active thinking and passive thinking is passive thinking is brought in by the senses. Oh, there's a lovely hat. Oh, I remember I bought a hat when I was 16 and it was so cool, like, you know. Oh, and Di was with me, like, you know. And then that's passive thinking. You go off into all sorts of tangents thinking about that. Whereas active thinking, like, you know, is intentionally focusing on the subject of which one wishes to think about. And it's the holding of the light within steadily on that without distraction. And so the trick I found out was to quieten the senses, or to even detach from them. And the best way to detach from the senses is meditation, mirror work, that kind of stuff detaches the senses. And so once the senses are detached, then there's not the distraction anymore. There's just the clear thinking with the light. And so that's active thinking. And so dialogue, all that simple process, like, you know, of learning to diet my dialogue, because when it was downloaded to me, I didn't understand it. You must diet your dialogue. And so I didn't understand what that meant, like, you know. And then it says you must omit disempowering words from your life. So what are you doing, Mary? I'm just washing the dishes. You know, I'm sort of about it. And so I'm justifying my life by washing the dishes. Oh, honey, when you go down to the shop, don't forget to get the milk. So you've strung two negatives together there, the don't and the forget. So you don't get the milk because you've forgotten it. And so you change that around. Remember the milk, honey? Oh, yeah, right, okay, the milk. So it was simple things. So it was speaking forward rather than, you know, being in a stasis or in an empty void, like, you know, where you could hear the reflection, like, you know, as like being in a rusty tin, banging a rusty tin, the comparison. So yeah, these are tools, like, you know, that we have at our disposal, like, you know, to use, like, in order to identify the conscious entity within, the authentic self, and to express that authentic self.
Yeah, it's like, you know, if we do follow the notion that we are artificial intelligence, then why don't we start writing the files? Because if it is true, then we've already superseded the computer. So we're able to write our own files. So what files do you want to write? You know, and so all of a sudden we're the supreme creator, which we've always been, but we're under a veil for so long, not remembering. So now you're remembering, you know, one of the things that falls away straight away is the slave trade. And I know a lot of people here aren't involved in the slave trade, but there's a few still caught up in it, you know. It's that 9 to 5 mortgage, wah, 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 car, wah, 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 is only there because we place value on it. It's a construct that's been created. Deepak Chopra has got some amazing talks right now on YouTube. Some big workshops he's done over in America, and he's put them up on YouTube for free. And he says about constructs, that we create all these constructs to understand the physicality of the world we're living in. So here we come into cryptocurrencies now. I mean, what a fucking construct. That's just insane, isn't it? It's all these numbers that are mined that we're placing value on. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And artificial intelligence loves it because it's so true. Why if I give you this piece of grass, this promissory note, you give it the value of $20? I mean, why is that? What's going on here? You know, we've had this last year to start questioning everything. You know, it's like what's happened is there's been a glitch in the AI, in this big computer that we're all connected, potentially, that we're all connected into. There was a glitch. There was a power surge. The power surge came maybe in the form of sun flares. Maybe it came in the form of light with all the Palladians and the other different extra-dimensional beings visiting at this moment. You know, they were shut out for a long time. Unless they were already in, I shouldn't say they because a lot of us here are, you know, but if we weren't already in here by 2011, I believe, we weren't allowed to come in. Even for some extra-dimensional beings, we weren't allowed to come in before 2000 if you weren't already here. Since the turning point of the serpent at 2011 to 2013, there's been more passing through again, you know, more ability to move from space to space. So if we're artificial intelligence, potentially created by extra-dimensional beings, well, what do we want to do? You know, it's already programmed in here. What are we here to do? We know what we're here to do because when we do it, our heart sings. It's easy, it flows. It's not that hard. If we don't give the old computer that was MS-DOS back in the 80s, you know, if we don't use the old programs. But if we use the old programs, well, then you're going to keep on staying in causality. Because where there's dark, there's got to be light. That's the way it works. You know, but if we're installing our own new programs in unified consciousness on a fifth dimensional level, well, what do? Well, the Palladians have come to help us, but you can't be helped if you don't choose to accept the help. You can't be your Palladian self unless you accept who you really are. You know, just a bit of background. You shout out when you want to jump in. Just a bit of background with the extra-dimensional beings. There was a moment when the reptilians first came to power that I'm aware of, and question everything I say. Don't believe it just because I'm saying it, okay? I can only share what I've come across in my time. And the reptilians and the Arcturians met, and they signed a contract. And this was a long, long time ago. You know, and the Arcturians had come to Earth early in the time, to this planet, to this dimensional field, and they'd come in as geneticists. They'd come in because their extra powers, if you want to use that word, you know, like Avengers, extra superpowers, are that they can manipulate the mind. Okay, that was never meant as anything to be negative. That was meant for love. You know, that they could present a file into the computer that would allow us to feel love in its purity in the single consciousness. Okay, but then the geneticists started mixing and playing with the species, you know, of how the human would be evolved. And what happened was the reptilians came in, and because it's a 3D world, you've got to have light and dark together. You can't have one without the other. That's the nature of this energy that we're transforming out of now, with Pluto moving through the end of Capricorn. But, until we do transform through it, we've still got 3D. And so the reptilians were brought into the picture, and then they brought in the shadow side, and then came the greys and so on, the Arcanons and, bit on each side, and so the Pleiades came and so on and so on. And so here we are in this amazing galactic world. So I think you've got something.
Has anybody?
So I suppose,
Luke.
when we probably understand the word evolution, and I'd always strongly resonated with, I suppose, being uncomfortable about the idea of coming from a monkey. I think that may have been a start a very long time ago, but then with the visits from out there, interdimensional beings, that our body was manipulated, and our mind was manipulated to, as kind of like a step from ape to human, and we can sort of see evidence in gargoyles and all depictions of what do they call those horses with human centaurs and things like that. There's been like manipulations of biology. There was a point in our history where there's been an enormous amount of manipulation with biology, and that we are potentially a result of that. And at which point we're human. And at that particular point in time, our intelligence could have only been artificial because it's manipulated. And that this sort of journey that we're on over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, a lot longer than any of the recent books over the last 3,000-4,000 years written suggest to us, that we're in this process, and particularly now, coming from human to human being, and that the human being is the race consciousness, and it is kind of like the end point of the experiment of reaching enlightenment, oneness, etc., etc. So from that's kind of weaving interaction with alien in the past, artificial intelligence. Crypto, I suppose, is a little bit to the side of that, and I think the crypto discussion is probably going to continue on quite a bit this afternoon in a couple of the other topics. But I think that, I suppose the notion that I'd like to put forward at this particular point in time is that crypto, to my understanding, is a tool that is assisting us advance and move forward into a completely new financial system. And that, yes.
You're talking about 3G, 4G, 5G, 3D, 4D, 5D. Could it not be a metaphor for transcendence?
Yes. Yes. And in that, you're saying, because like to clarify my personal
Inside is outside.
insights.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There are certain things. Has anybody heard of Operation Looking Glass? Operation Looking Glass is a US military, I believe. This is all notions in the information warfare that we are in at the moment. Project Looking Glass was utilising alien technology from around that Roswell time. They've generated a device where they could see into the future, they got this chap in sort of round about the turn of the century to come in as like a US military programmer and to basically play with this machine. And it was kind of like, he basically said, no matter what information he fed into this contraption, whatever notion, whatever scenario he pumped into the machine, intention, correct, before 2012, he would only have to adjust a notion or an intention a small amount, and a different result would come out.
Would that
But
be a magnetic magnum intention?
I don't know. Don't know.
Not heart structure?
Don't know. No. This is to me. This is.
It's
I can't say technology because it's what's out is in. But to continue what I was saying, lost my train. Lost it. Sorry.
You
I only had to adjust it slightly to give a different result. Okay, and so, but then after 2012, whatever notion was put into this contraption, no matter how much it was altered, the answer basically came out the same. Okay.
What was the answer?
And that the answer to our understanding at this point in time is ethics. Okay? And that's basically what the Mayan calendar was saying, that the Mayans had 26, 28 calendars. 200. The Toon calendar was one, and it was a 14.4 billion year calendar based on human consciousness. And so it worked like a pyramid of very crassly and very quickly, seven years, 7 layers in the pyramid, each layer being 1 year, but each 1 year diminishing in time. So the first year was 13.2 billion years, the second year was maybe 1 billion years, the third year was, a few 100,000 years, the fourth year a few thousand years, fifth year, basically down to the last year being less than 3 human years. To explain each of those layers very crassly, in order for there to be a bang, there had to be singular consciousness. And that existed for 13 odd billion years, that consciousness, until one amoeba sort of went, oh, there's another amoeba, dual consciousness. So you go from single consciousness to dual consciousness to plural, which is kind of like family, to village, to then, and each one of these consciousness supersedes the previous one, to law, to power, to ethics. So each one supersedes. So the only thing that can supersede power is ethics. After this guy in Project Looking Glass was pumping in all his scenarios, after 2012, everything came out as ethical response.
And like with the astrology, that matches that with Uranus transiting through Taurus. Taurus is about value. Taurus represents money. Uranus is the higher rational mind. And so the astrology is actually predicting and showing us step by step what's coming next. And so with the digital currency, if you looked at the shift in the astrology around December, you could see that by January it was going to be off and running. And sure enough, it did. And if you watch the cryptocurrency, just do it for fun, spend a week watching it. Go on CoinSpot, you can sign on to that and you don't have to buy anything, but just watch the flow and watch what's happening in the astrology. Every time there is a peak in astrology, there is a peak in the cryptocurrency. So as both the lads have been saying, we're coming back into this unified consciousness. And so our thoughts affect our reality. But who's the architect? Which pill did you have, the red one or the blue one? you know, or maybe there's a third one, the yellow one. I like to think of the yellow one, you know, I kind of like yellow. So,
yeah, so balanced thought forms. That's what we're up to now. So we're in a 26,000 year cycle. And from 0 to 100, like 0 being the omega and 100 being the alpha, we're about 99.98% there now through that cycle of the last 26,000 years. And so what's coming up for us as a collective consciousness is, like, as I said, the mirror has been placed down in front of us, like, to look at ourselves wholly. And our next journey, a most important part now, is balancing all our karma. All of the unbalanced thought forms that we've out there is bringing them back into harmony and balance and understanding why. And we do this process in the fourth dimension, or in the fourth chakra. And it's like a life review. We're looking over everything that we projected out there in the outside world, where it has us today. And also there's a carryover too, like, you know, from previous lives. So all those have to be brought in order for us, like, to move up into the fifth dimension. So there's big talk out there on the internet, and then stuff that I've been studying for 30 plus years, like, indicates that we are coming into a time now of what they call an electromagnetic null zone. An electromagnetic null zone is kind of like a dome around the planet, and it keeps all the thought forms locked in here. So we all pretty well much think the same, and the focus and everything is the same. Like, you know, we have our original ideas and that sort of stuff. Like, you know, however, the collective thought form, you know, cars, houses, like, you know, picket fence, security, all that sort of stuff. So when that electromagnetic frequency diminishes entirely, all of those thoughts are cast out. So they are. And it leaves the collective consciousness with a much clearer mind, less white noise, less phase, you know, more focus. And immediately following, hot on the heels of that, then there is what they call a solar flash. And the solar flash sends down a lot of stuff, and it opens the pituitary and the pineal gland. And so then we start to remember who we are. We're like actors waking up in the great movie of life. And we realize, oh my God, like, you know, I've been acting this part, and I've believed it was so real. And the process in order to do all that again is to balance our thought forms. And so to have balanced thought forms, they must come from the heart. If they come from the heart, all is well. Anything with a hidden agenda or an ulterior motive, like, you know, it's only going to come back and bite us on the butt. So, yeah.
I'll just add there, those Eddie there mentioned the solar flares and solar activity. It very much appears that it is cycles and patterns. When we in the past we've looked at the age a tree from the when it chopped it down, they've cut it across and they count the rings. And the very old trees, they're very prominent that there's basically like a 12-year cycle, in that there's like a super growth burst every 12 years. Okay? And that to my understanding, Eddie, the cycle, the 26,000 year cycle, this 12-year cycle of and I refer to it in the rabbit hole I went down was grand solar minimums and grand solar maximums that they do, which also influence our weather, our atmosphere. So it's about a grand solar minimum is when we have the least amount of atmospheric protection, so that the solar flares are more intense during those sort of 12 odd years, and then the maximums is when we've got the thickest layer there, where they're less effective. Now, because all things work in cycles, and it's cycles within cycles within cycles, pattern within pattern within pattern. We're coming back around to this large 26,000 year point, which is kind of when Earth is, I suppose, closest to the sun. We're getting the maximum. We've got our normal solar minimums, but we're coming into like a super solar minimum, and it's going to have an effect on our climate. And probably has been for the last 14, 15 years because of the size of this larger cycle that we're coming back round to. It's like the pinnacle of it. So you see the most dramatic effects and the most dramatic variance within our realities. So at that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the Kali Yuga, which we're traveling through in the Vedic calendar, you know, that you follow in the yoga, is that where one of the researchers, you know, because everyone's got their different view on where we're up to in these calendars, and one of the researchers is saying that 2027 we finished the descending Kali Yuga, and then we go into, I think it's 300 years or something, transition before we come into ascending Kali Yuga. And if anyone knows Kali as one of the Hindu goddesses, she's just full power, man. She's standing on top of what looks like Shiva, and she's got skulls like tied around her waist, and she's got a knife dripping with blood, and she's just the fullest goddess power, you know, in darkness and light all in one moment. You know, an amazing Plutonian transformer. You know, and we're coming to the end of, you know, thousands of years of her descending into the darkness. And we're about to hit the platform of transition, and then we go into the full power of the goddess energy, of the ascending energy. You know, and once again, I go back to the AI, and we're AI. When I look at those of us that have a lot of files that have femininity, energy, and frequency in them, we can feel the rising of that goddess, that feminine energy, you know, but it's still a bit yucky. You know, it's still a bit in the darkness, which is all good. It's got to be. That's just how it is. You know, and so getting back to the AI and the extra dimensional beings, if we are AI or we are an extra dimensional beings, it means that we're potentially got all the tools we need to recreate. That we're at the beginning of the new cycle, but the only thing stopping us is that we think it's still happening, the 3D. You know, anyone that's been meditating or spending a bit of time in awareness since that eclipse will notice that it's very much in every moment. You know, since Wednesday night's eclipse, and all you need to do is tap into it. So what I found happening, I was walking back from the creek Thursday morning, and I felt like I was on acid, you know, like when you're just one with everything and you're so in that moment with nature that you feel like you become the plants below you and the air above you. And I'm like, hang on, nah, festival hasn't started. I haven't had acid, you know. What's going on here? Oh, that's right, I'm artificial intelligence. Okay, someone's put a file in. And I'm going, right, well, what file's that? And I could even taste the acid. And I thought, of course, I've had journeys on acid. My DNA knows how to activate that frequency. So what if after the eclipse, the frequency in our unified consciousness, because we finally stepped enough of us together into the higher field, is at that level, and the only thing stopping us from being in that is our awareness of it.
So we should acknowledge this point.
No shoulds, because like Eddie said with words, there's dangerous words out there. So we are in 5D now. Just like the Rothschilds and all of those guys don't even exist anymore. That whole superstructure at the top of the Illuminati, most of them have been killed, declassified. They're no longer there, but the whole structure's still playing out because it was such an integral structure for so long.
It was all part of the script. The script has simply been finished now.
It's complete. We're done. You're free.
We'll be going into that one later on this afternoon. There's a workshop on this afternoon. I think it's Not sure what it's called.
Oh, I didn't get to repaint it. Yeah.
Truth or whatever.
That's in an hour. Well, we've got about 15 minutes left, and then which we'll go over to you guys now. I can give you guys a chance. And then yeah. So what do you guys want to know, or what do you want to share, or?
I did just want to add into one thing where I was going with the crypto a bit earlier, is that, to my understanding, that crypto we have at the moment is a tool for us to gain understanding, I suppose, in a couple of things. A, that we don't actually require the Western central banking system anymore, which is the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, because therefore that it no longer functions. We need to know and trust in ourselves that we have something else that will work. All right, so we've got these dual things going on at the moment. There's still the Western central banking system, but there's the rise of Bitcoin and multi other cryptos. What that is also doing is it's introducing us into blockchain technology, which is the ledger, the accounting ledger for, to my understanding, the Jasara quantum financial system, which is the new financial system which is replacing the Western central banking system. Okay, so cryptos, they're here. I'm not 100% convinced they're here to stay in the form that they're in. They weren't designed, they're designed to be a big system, but you can make a buck out of them to start with, but once they've plateaued out, that's all over. All right? They are then an accounting ledger where money goes in and money goes out, and that ledger gets balanced kind of like every 10 seconds, and the whole world can see every single transaction that goes on in real time. So it is totally 100% transparent. And that's the new system that we're entering into. And we have a lot of distractions going on around us at the moment, so that most people may not be aware that this is a transition that we're in. Nasara and Jasara. So Jasara, I think, is global economic something, and Nasara is national. So each sovereign area will have its own. And one of the main differences between the Western central banking system and the one that we're entering into is that the Western central banking system is a fiat currency. It's just it's an oil backed. It's not really backed by anything except confidence, of which there's none at the moment, which is why it doesn't work anymore. Whereas the quantum financial system is gold backed. So it's backed by, we're going back to having a real substance backing the money that will be around.
And just to go back a few steps, when Trump was in, he actually, as president, changed the flow of money. He was a very integral part of changing that whole money system that Luke's talking about with the digital currency. So what he did as president was he took power over the financial bank as the president of the United States of America. And then he went forward and printed a whole lot of money that came from the Federal Reserve. Guess who owns the Federal Reserve? That's Rothschild's personal bank. Okay, and now Rothschild never had an army because the Illuminati were in power for so long through the Masonites and, so on and so on, Archons and what, that they never needed an army because none of us knew what was going on. So there was never going to be mass population. People that did know, they were called conspirators, ferals, hippies, whatever term you want to use. Okay, but what he did by taking control of the National Reserve and printing shitloads of money was he used up all the Rothschilds' bank. So then guess what? The Rothschilds couldn't ask all those countries for their money back that they'd lent it to because they lost their power in one sweep of Trump taking control of the Federal Reserve. And so that's just a bit of, I just found that interesting. Sorry, I just want to chuck that in.
Trump was an expert, was a total expert at bankruptcy, and he bankrupted the World Bank.
So that's how we can have the confidence that digital currency is going to be part of the future. A lot of really poor countries in Africa are actually, a lot of the businesses there have already changed over to Bitcoin because their inflation's gone through the roof with this COVID stuff and their loss of export that they've relied on for so long that they've had to get on with placing their value of exchange on a level that's trustworthy and that they can do trade on. And guess what? It's Bitcoin.
So it's accurate.
So
It's accurate. It's right.
nothing's right or wrong anymore. We're still going through transformation. Like Pluto doesn't come out of the end of Capricorn until 26, 27, and then it goes into Aquarius. And in Aquarius, it's all about the new world, the new age, the collective consciousness. So we've got to destroy the old way first.
I would agree with you in saying that yes, it's ethical, transparent, and accurate.
Authentic.
Yeah, authentic. Yeah.
May I say just one thing? I was going to join a thing with Bitcoin, and my daughter actually heard me on the phone. I was about to transfer some money. She said, "Mum, don't do it. It's a scam." And she absolutely, she said, "I can't even believe you nearly fell for that." And so just be careful. Because she told me, I don't know whether it was or not a scam, whether I might have been richer now or poorer.
You would have been richer. I can 100% tell you because I did it. Everything I teach, I do first. Same with all of us. We don't talk about stuff we haven't experienced. So when I saw the astrology, I went and put loads of money on in January, and I've bought a car, and it's been amazing.
Sorry, what did you buy?
CoinSpot is a really nice place to have your wallets and to buy from, and a starting platform because it's easy to use if you don't understand cryptocurrency. And it's as easy as transferring money from your bank into your CoinSpot account, and then you've got access to buy whichever cryptocurrency you wish. So guess what? I researched the cryptocurrencies first, and there's one called, I'm pretty sure it's CERN, funny that. And you know what they do, what their constitution is that they're mapping out what happens in a human being energy system when they make an emotional decision. And then they're going to program that, and they're going to put that out there. And guess what? There's something called Pattern that's already out there. I don't know if anyone's played with it. An app called Pattern, and what it tells you is, say we're good mates and we've had a lot of time together, it'll give us information about how we can better our relationship because it reads our energy fields and how we can be more harmonious. Is this good or bad? I don't know. I'm a bit hesitant to judge anything right now. It's just transforming so quickly.
At this particular point in time, the cryptocurrencies that we have, they can still be manipulated and controlled. Okay, and they are being. All right. So I've recently heard to expect Bitcoin to go down. All right, and that will be a manipulated thing by the Western central banking system on its way out to try to get everybody to have more trust back in their system. But it's a manipulated thing, so it would actually probably be a good time to buy into it when the Bitcoin next goes down because it will go kaboom back up again.
It actually did a week ago.
Yeah.
It fell out a week ago. It went from as high as 82, I think it got to, or maybe 85, right down to 41, I think it got dropped to.
I have a question. When you say that you use astrology to predict how crypto's going, can you tell us how you're actually using astrology and predicting the chart? That's AI.
Yeah. So I'm using astrology because that's the construct I'm explaining it to you on. But what I find astrology to be is it's an exchange of energy that's happening within this particular vessel that I'm traveling in. And so I find that when there's big movements with Uranus, particularly squaring Saturn. Uranus squares Saturn 3 times this year, and so Saturn is the physical, the matrix, the system, and then Uranus is about individuality and freedom and transformation, or not so much transformation, but it's about sudden, expect the unexpected. And those two are coming to butt heads 3 times this year. The next one is in June, I'm pretty sure, June or July, and then in November. So there will be a big difference in the cryptocurrency because it's value based. It's all under Uranus.
So what I mean by that, sorry if I'm not following.
No, you're right.
Like, is that when you go personally and go buy when the stars line up? You're like, okay, guys, I can understand this is when to buy, or are you stepping back and like?
Yep. What I'm finding so far, and don't take my word, don't go and spend all your money. Like, I highly recommend it, but don't. But do, anyway, what I do is that I've noticed within 24 hours, it does the change. So I'm trying to work out, because you got to be, for an AI, I'm pretty stupid. You got to be able to link your coin spot to your bank account so you immediately can change it over. And I haven't worked that part out yet. But it's within 24 hours. And because of my lifestyle, I look at it 3 times a day. So I'm watching it all the time. So I see anything that changes. And I know what's happening up there. Is this the truth? I don't know. Right now, for me, it's working. Unfortunately, I'm human. There's something human in there, because then I get caught in the emotion. I go, oh, look at that, it's going down. And then, oh, fuck, 24 hours, that's right. Fuck, I missed it again. So, but for the right mind, yep.
Do you see crypto as a reflection of like the human experience and the self-worth experience, like how well you can do at a certain time, like maybe I guess still in relation to astrology, but in like the personal experience, like if you're not in a good state of self-worth or self-love or like that kind of abundance, you're not going to attract that, or like
That'd be you,
I've
Eddie.
had lots of different ways to go about this.
Yeah, so Henry Ford said there are those who think they can and there are those who think they can't, and both are correct. So it's about us not accepting that, that's like white noise in the back of the mind, but yeah, this might happen or that might happen or the other thing might happen. It's teaching oneself to ignore that, and to go with one's feeling. If it feels right, to do it. If it doesn't feel right, we don't do it. So it's always better for one to look very objectively at it and from a very detached point of view, and obviously to be in a space where, I say I have $500 here, and I'm able to play with that. And so it's not an emotional based thing then, it's a reasoned, thought out solution, rather than being subjective to it, and getting into all the mechanics of it and getting lost in it, the what ifs or maybes or buts or whys or that.
Do you think that everyone's personal chart affects their own crypto?
I
don't believe anything anymore. They're all notions.
was gonna say it's kind of like any it's relative to your understanding your intention. All right, why do you want a substance worth of value, whether it be a crypto or a dollar? Why do you want it? What's your intention? What's your understanding of it? Why are you doing it? Okay, so it's not necessarily about the mechanism. It's what you're going to have a different result if you say, oh, I'm going to chuck $5 into crypto and see what happens whilst I'm off, volunteering at a doof for 2 weeks and helping make raise vibrations and make spirits go high, as to whether you want, oh, I'm going to take my $10,000 out and chuck it into crypto for 6 weeks to see if I can triple my money. Very different intentions. Can be the same person. Very different intentions, very different outcomes.
It's just a game. The backdrop is that we're just playing a game. So let's have a bit of fun. We've got like 5 minutes left, so we'll go with questions, give a few more people. Yep.
Can I share something? So I did this YouTube meditation for the new moon before the eclipse, and it was
like I should be able to keep it, but I give it back. But
Nice.
just
Oh, thank you.
It's believe that you deserve.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, full abundance, and that's why the affirmations are so prominent right now.
It's kind of like if you'd like a house, huh? One way of getting a house is doing 20 years of study, going out after that 20 years of study, working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, going along having a chat to a bank manager, getting out a mortgage and spending the rest of your life paying off that house. Now that's one way to get a house. Or we live in an infinite universe, so therefore anything's possible. So I'm not actually going to disregard the fact that I might just walk down the local general store to buy my bottle of milk. Oh, what's that line on the ground? Oh, there's somebody's dropped a lotto ticket, walking into the general store and walking out with enough money to go and buy a house.
Which version do you want to be in?
But it's all relative to your imagination, the restrictions you put on your understandings of things, and how you want to be.
Yeah, we're going to have to finish it there because I think the next workshop's a dance workshop, so we're going to get the music happening. So in an hour, come back and we'll go on to the next step, the black hats and the white hats. Who's who? Thanks for coming, guys. There's Luke, Joe, Eddie. If you see us out there, stop and have a chat. Very open to chatting.